Today we're going to talk about weeding tools and techniques typically used on market farms. And this will primarily be hand tools. So anything from wheel hose to tine weeders to flame weeders. And so we're going to show you the features of each one and show you how to use them. So in the front we have, starting from right to left, you have a collinear hoe, a push hoe, a tine weeder, a large stirrup hoe, a smaller stirrup hoe or hula hoe, and just a little wire weeder that I made from an old landscape staple. And I'll show you how to make those too. But they have long handle and short handle wire weeders that you can purchase. In the back, 1, 2, 3, we've got 3 wheel hoes here. This one is an old Planet Junior one, easily 100 years old or older, still works great. This is a high arch double wheel hoe for going over large plants. And this is an Earthway large wheel hoe, and it's got a stirrup hoe attachment to it. And on the left here is the flame weeder. This style of hoe is called a stirrup hoe because it resembles a stirrup that you might put your foot in when you're riding horseback. And so the small one, it's a hula hoe. This is just a regular stirrup hoe. And these, unlike the old hoes that you'd see in movies, used in the 30s and stuff, these are what you'll probably be using most often on a market farm. And these are omnidirectional, so you can go front and back with this. There's a little bit of play on these, and what this does is just cuts the roots off under the soil level. And the small ones for hand weeding when you're down on your knees, just cleaning the rows. But this long-handled one, that's got a grip on the end. You hold it like this, and you just go back and forth. You can just pull toward you, or just go back and forth down the row, and it'll again cut the roots off right below the soil, not turning the soil over, exposing new seeds. And this is probably the most widely used tool that you'll use on a market farm, stirrup hoe. This is a collinear hoe, and the feature of this is a very, very small single direction blade. And you might wonder, well, what can I do with such a tiny thing? It's actually perfect if you're planting lettuces or spinach or something that has a tight spacing. And this little blade and long handle allows you to go in between each of the little plants and just scuff up the soil and kill those thread stage weeds. And so you can go down the line in between the plants. And it actually is a very handy and frequently used tool on a market farm. This is a long-handled push hoe. And so, unlike other hoes where you're going back and forth and maybe even pulling toward you, this is strictly made for pushing down a row. So you just kind of lock your arm. It has a push handle at the end, and you just push, and it cuts weeds off just under the soil, and you just walk down the line cutting the roots of the weeds off. And I find this mostly handy going in between plants that have weeds that have already started growing, maybe even 3 or 4 inches tall, or going down the rows in the high tunnel or hoop house just to clean them up. So it just cuts the roots off below the surface, and the weeds die off. The nice thing about it is it doesn't turn the soil over, exposing more weed seeds, so it just cuts them off below the surface, and you've got a nice stale bed on top. So you can use just about anything to hand weed in a market farm. A very common tool is what's called a wire weeder. So it's just really, it's gonna have a thick gauge wire with a handle. You can find them, just small ones like this. This is one I made myself, but you can buy them from Johnny's or Neversink. So you've got short handle ones, and you've got ones that are at the end of long handles. And this, again, just disrupts the soil, killing off those thread stage weeds. And they're very easy to use. They have some with interchangeable blades, or interchangeable wires. And so instead of a narrow wire, you can get a thick wire and all sorts of different dimensions. And they're very nice if you're doing lettuces and spinach and things that are tightly spaced. Once weeds are established, these are almost impossible to use because they don't have a cutting blade on them. But when you're still at the thread stage, or even before you think you need to weed, just take one of these down your rows, and it'll prevent the recently germinated weed seeds from ever growing into a full plant. What I'm holding here is called a tine weeder. There are many different versions of it, but all of them have thin, flexible tines. And what you'd primarily use this for are crops that you've direct seeded and that have a long taproot. So carrots and daikon radishes, these are perfect for it. And so what they do, right after you've planted your carrots and they've started coming up, you just drag this down the line over your carrots, because they have a long taproot, and this pulls out all the weeds that have really shallow taproot. So the thread stage weeds and maybe the purslane that's just germinated, this will just rip that right out of the ground and leave the carrots in the ground. And so it's great for weeding carrot beds and things like that. Once the weeds get too established, this won't do anything. And so you've got to use this early on, right after, maybe a week or so after the carrot seeds and daikon seeds have germinated, just so you know there's a deep taproot in the ground. And this will work really well for you. So now I'm going to talk about the wheel hose and different options for that. This is an antique Planet Junior wheel hoe, late 1800s, early 1900s. The only place you can find these are on eBay and garage sales. And the person I got this from got pretty upset when I told them I'd actually be using it farming, because you'll see people put them in front of their houses, in their gardens as a decorative feature. But these things were so well made that they work great and they last, and you can still find parts for them, which is awesome. And so it has a single wheel in the front. It's a small wheel, but it's got a single wheel, and then a push handle, a double push handle. And what you do for wheel hose, this also has sweeps on it. They're all different features you can get for it, but I have 3 sweeps added in. And so you just rest the sweeps on the ground. You don't go too deeply, and you just walk with this, and it cuts the weeds out as you walk. What I have here is a double wheel high arch hoe from Haas. And the feature of this is the high arch in the middle that allows you to go over larger plants. So if you have a kale bed or chard bed that's already established, this is a great one for going over those taller plants. And the 2 wheels allow you to straddle the plant, and you've got sweeps on both sides. And so it just, the plant is right here, and it just cultivates on both sides of it, killing off the weeds. So you've got a nice weed-free area on both sides of the plant. So this is a time saver. Most wheel hoes, you can only go down one side at a time. And so this way you're doing both sides of the plant at once. It requires a little more pushing on your part, so a little more upper body strength, but it does work very well. This one right here is my favorite wheel hoe. We do a lot of wheel hoeing on my farm, just to clean up the sides of each of the rows. And this one is from Earthway. They have 2 different models, one that's all tubular steel and one that is wooden handles with tubular steel. And so I have that one, and it has lasted 7 years, and we've used and abused this, and it's kept going. And you can find these on Amazon or at the Sauter's Produce Supply Catalog or Nalt's. And the feature of this, what I like, is it's got the large wheel, which makes it a lot easier to push as you go along. The smaller wheels, if your soil's loose or if you have rocks, it jams them, where this large wheel just rolls over just about anything. And on this one, they have lots of attachments for it, but my favorite attachment is the Stirrup hoe attachment. And so it's got a nice blade along here. This is about 8 inches or 9 inches wide. And so you stand at the side of your plant, lock your arms in place, you make sure it's at the right adjustment for your height, and just walk and drag that stirrup in the soil, and it'll cut the roots off of the plants as you go along, off of all the weeds, and it saves you a lot of time. What we have here is a flame weeder. So this is a walk behind flame weeder. It's got 5 burners on it, and the feature is you've got a propane tank. You can carry it, which gets pretty heavy, or you can put it on a backpack frame. You've got the control valve in the handle. You've got a wheel in the front, and you've got the 5 burners going right here. And what you'd use this for is for carrot beds. And pretty much you only use it for carrots, because the interesting thing about carrots is that the germination time for carrot seeds is about 10 days, where most weed seeds will germinate in about 5 to 7 days. And so what this allows you to do, it allows you to plant your carrot bed, you irrigate it to try to get all the weed seeds to germinate. And then after about 5 days, you take this over the bed and just flame it. And you're not cooking the bed, you're not trying to char the soil, you're just going over at a regular walking speed and just burning those thread stage weeds. And then that gives you a nice stale bed for those carrots a few days later to germinate and grow up in. So now I'm going to show you how to use a flame weeder. This is one that I picked up from flameweeders.com. And so some of the features are, before you start, you'll have to have a propane tank, probably a large capacity one. You can hold it. It gets really heavy if you do as you're walking down the row, or you can get a backpack frame for it. And depending on how comfortable you are holding a propane tank and a flamethrower, pretty much, you can carry this on your back, and it's a lot easier on the body. Other features of this are you've got another shut-off valve, a safety shut-off valve here. There's a twist regulator here to figure out what the ideal setting is for the torch. And then there's this handle. And when it's in the up position, it's just got a pilot light burning on all the burners. When it's down, then it releases the full force of the gas, and then it's working well. And a couple other features of this. You've got the wheel here. Just a word of warning, if you park this for too long with this running, you will start melting this wheel. So watch out for that. And this has a wind guard on it, which is really nice because it's not always going to be optimal conditions to be doing this. And so this wind guard on both sides keeps the wind from blowing the burners out and makes for an even burn across the whole thing. What you also want when you're starting this off is one of these. This is like a creme brulee torch. It's under $15 on Amazon and other places. But you want to make sure you have a nice strong flame to ignite these burners. And you don't want to wait too long before igniting them, because once you turn this on, it's going to start filling this whole chamber, especially if it's got the wind guard, with gas and oxygen. So once you light it, if it's been filling for too long and you light it, it's just going to blow some flame back at you and possibly pop this up. So just once you turn it on, then light it right away. So you don't want to be fiddling with matches or a cheap lighter. Use something solid to light it with. And so besides using this for carrot beds, as I mentioned, it can be handy for stale bedding. If you've got a nice field that you're trying to stale bed, you can stale bed with one of these. You can clear a couple inches of snow off of your parking lot and also clear weeds out of your parking lot. But it's also a great way to catch your parking lot on fire, which I know from experience. So be careful with it. You are dealing with a lot of heat. If you, by mistake, catch some debris that's in the field on fire and keep walking, you do have the risk of having that burn out of control behind you without even you noticing. So just keep an eye on it. It can be dangerous, but as long as you use it safely, it's a great tool to have. Okay, so here's how you start it. First, you open your tank all the way. And then once you've got your torch handy in your hand, you open up this safety valve here. Twist it backwards. Lift this up a little bit. You can hear the torches ignite. Then if I squeeze the handle up top, so what you do, assume that the carrots were planted in this maybe 5 or 6 days ago. Go over, walk down the road. Then when you're done, you're switching rows. It just stays on a pilot light right now. So you can move it around and go to another row, or if you're fully done, what I do, I turn it off at the tank and I allow all the gas to burn out of this tube, so there's no more gas left in it. Otherwise, some gas could be pressurized in here, and you just don't want to have that risk. So the goal of this is not to incinerate the weeds. You just go over at a nice walking pace and you just superheat them. So you're not cooking them, you don't want them to char. They will just wilt on their own, and that will kill them. So a lot of people make the mistake of going too slow, and if you do, you heat up the soil so much that you kill your weed or your carrot seeds underground. So just keep moving. Even if there are weeds left behind you, it will kill them, even though they don't look dead right away. Next, I'm going to demonstrate how to use the wheel hose and different hand tools to weed this. This is a planting of radishes that was planted about 3 weeks ago, and what's come up is purslane all around it. There's no drip tape that I have to worry about hitting or snagging with the blades of these tools, so it does make it go a lot faster. We use overhead wobblers for our fall planting, so we're not dealing with drip tape. And yeah, so once the irrigation is out of the way, you can start using the tools, and I'll show you how. So here is the Earthway wheel hoe with a stirrup blade on it, and the real key is to set up your beds so that whatever you plant in there is wide enough that you can get this wide blade. It's about 8 or 9 inches wide between the plants, because if it's a narrow planting, you'll end up hitting the plants and then it's just going to be a mess. So you want it wide enough that you can run this right down the middle of your row. Again, when I use a wheel hoe like this, I usually go in between the two beds first and then do the outsides. It's just easier for me. And the key is you're not going to be removing these weeds. You're actually going to cut the roots out of it and just leave them on the surface. Sometimes purslane can reroot itself, but usually it doesn't. Usually you weaken it enough that it's not a problem. And so you just kind of lock your arms onto your sides and you just walk through. And as I go, it's just cutting the roots out without hurting these plants. And you can just go at a normal walking pace, whatever's comfortable for you. Sometimes if there's a stubborn weed, you have to chop down into it. And it's pretty easy to do since you're already upright. But the ergonomics of this are very nice. Now I'm on the outside and you can see that this is just undercutting this purslane. So it's cutting the roots off and then just laying it back on top. It's not stirring up the soil too much. I am going back and forth a little bit where the soil's hard. But see, I just cut through Canada thistle, just top that right there, some pigweed, all sorts of good weeds here. And that's it. So it doesn't take too much time. Here I am about to use a antique Planet Junior wheel hoe, and it's got sweeps on the back of it. And again, this is probably about 100 or 120 years old, but still works great. And you just lock your arms and you walk down the row, and it just rips this purslane and the other weeds right out of the ground. So it's just pulling the weeds out. And if it's a dry enough day, a lot of these weeds just desiccate. So now I'm going to demonstrate the high arch double wheel hoe from Haas. You do have to make sure that you plant it in a straight line and that you walk in a straight line. And this has sweeps on both sides, so I'm straddling this planting and it's just ripping up the weeds on both sides without disrupting this plant. Oh, you got to make sure. It looks like the row bent a little bit there, so you got to follow it carefully so you're not ripping your plants out. As you can see, it's just disrupting, it's pulling out all this purslane. And if it's a dry day, a lot of that should dry up and die. If it's about to rain though, it might replant itself. So just be careful about the weather. But this works really well, and you can go down and do a bed very quickly. So this is a long-handled push hoe. And what you do, you've got your bed here, your 2 rows. You just make sure this blade goes just a little bit under the soil, and you just kind of walk and push. And it's popping out all the purslane, the Canada thistle, just cutting it out right underneath the surface. There's pigweed that it just knocked down. So you can go pretty fast with this. There's sometimes you have to go back and forth with the Canada thistle, but it usually cuts it right out. So you'll see it cleans up the rows very nicely. That's because it's got a nice, long, pointed blade, and this sweep just cuts everything off. And so it's a nice tool and very easy to use. This is a long-handled stirrup hoe. What you do, you can either go forward or backwards. I often like to go backwards. And you're just scraping this blade back and forth along the surface. It's cutting the roots out of these weeds. There's a lot of control, so you can get very close to the plant. And you're just killing the weeds as you go backwards. So you see, it just cuts the plant off right below the soil. And ideally, and Canada thistle will grow back, but most of these weeds won't. So that's the benefit of that. So this is your traditional hoe. Chances are you have one in your shed or somewhere. These were very common way back in the day. And honestly, on a market farm, you rarely use these. What you'd use this for, if you are to use it, on our farm, we use it mostly for mixing cement because we have the other hand tools. But this is great for if you have established tall weeds. So with this Canada thistle, usually sharpen this blade here, and you just chop it off. So if you got a few tall weeds, you can go through, see if we can do this pigweed here, and just chop it out with this tool. But besides using a mower, this is kind of your tool of last resort when you have tall weeds, but you don't want to be bending over and pulling them out. There's a tine weeder, and so it's got all the really thin metal tines here on springs, and this is what you use for carrots and other long-rooted, direct-seeded crops. Okay, so we got carrots down here, and they're pretty well established. So I know there's a long taproot in there that's going to hold them in, and the tine weeder just goes through, and it doesn't pull the carrots up, but it's killing off this purslane and the other stuff. And these carrots, even though they're knocked down a little bit, they will pop back up. But a lot of the other weeds won't. The drawback is if you've got a lot of debris in your field, it's going to be pulling up rocks and roots and other things like that. But it does work really well for carrot beds. Just, if you can keep these things at thread stage and just go through every few days, you'll get a lot of your weeds under control. Okay, so the more precise you want to be in your weed management, the smaller the tool. And so just as the wheel hoes were large, we're getting smaller and smaller to just 2 and 3 inch tools here. And these things are great for things like head lettuce or salanova or spinach, things that are planted very close together. And what I have here is a collinear hoe. I'll show you how to use this. It's just about a 3.5 inch blade or so. It's very sharp on one side. And this is great for getting in between. You want to move your drip tape because this will cut right through it. Just getting in between plants. And because there are little weeds popping up here, you're just killing them as they're popping up. And so a wider tool wouldn't be able to get in between these things. So this is a great tool for getting in between tight spaces. So next, you'll have a hula hoe. It's like a small stirrup hoe, but just handheld. Again, you are leaning over, but like for example, that grass just pulled right out. You just go through between the plants and rip the weeds out with one of these things. Lastly, it's just a wire weeder. So this is just one I made out of a landscape staple and some duct tape, but you can buy them long-handled ones, short-handled ones, and just a wire, rounded wire that goes in, and you just take your hand and you can scrape between the plants. So if you've got a bed of Salanova that's pretty densely packed, or spinach, one of these might be your best bet. You just go through probably once until the canopy closes in and smothers the weeds. So it is a lot of work. You're bending over quite a bit, but it works well. Now I'm going to show you how to make a little handheld tine weeder for probably less than 5 cents using a landscape staple and some Gorilla Tape. So there are a lot of different landscape staples you could choose from, and different options for you. But these are about 1 inch wide by, I don't know, about 6 inches long or so. And I'll walk you through how to do this. So you get your staple. First, do maybe a 2 or 3 inch piece of tape, and then just tape over the ends of this. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Right now you're just holding these two sides together. And then you get another longer piece of Gorilla Tape. I like Gorilla Tape because it lasts several seasons out in the field. And so I start a couple inches up, just wrapping around, just have it at a little bit of an angle, so this winds its way up the tool and then just wraps around. And then you just squeeze it all together, and you've got a nice hand tool. And to use it, you just put your thumb on there, you grab it, and go down the lines weeding. Now, another option you can do is, if you have an old broom handle or something like that, you just tape one of these to it, and then you've got a long-handled one. So again, you just get your Gorilla Tape started, figure out what depth you want. Usually about 2 inches or so would be good. And just hold it tight and wrap around, just making sure that at the very end it's taped off well, because that's where all the pressure is going to be. And then, just like that, you have your own wire weeder tool for the cost of just a few cents.